Well, there is a picture taken today in the Ontario legislature that is so powerful that I think it's going to lead to a reversal on the rule that led to this picture. So this was shared by Kristen Rishawi of the Toronto Star, where she tweets out here along with the picture saying MPP Sarah Jama being asked to leave the legislature for wearing a keffiyeh. This is the kind of image that we look back in history books and think, look at how crazy things were. Look at how racist people were. This is today. So I did a video a few days ago on the banning of the keffiyeh in the legislature, and it's because of a few people. It's not, the entirety of the government didn't vote for this. It's a few people object to the keffiyeh in the legislature, so it's banned because it's being viewed as a political symbol. I'm going to get to, later on in this video, the obvious double standard on display here, where there are some so-called political symbols that are perfectly fine. There's no debate over them at all. But a keffiyeh, for some reason, being viewed as political. There's obvious roots in racism here because it's obvious. There's no other explanation for the obvious double standards that we are seeing. So, before I get to some more here, just a reaction online. The lone black hijabi MPP in Ontario, married to a Palestinian, in her seat, which she earned after being elected by the people of Hamilton with a stronger mandate than most of her colleagues, being ejected for wearing a Palestinian scarf. We live in a deeply racist province. So, Sarah Jama won her seat with more than half of the vote, which doesn't often happen in a parliamentary system with multiple parties. More than half of the vote being asked to leave because she is representing what some view as being political. Lorenda Redcop here with an update. She's from CBC, saying Sarah Jama back in question period wearing her keffiyeh. The speaker interrupted the proceedings, reminded members of the dress code, finally asking Jama to leave. She did not and has remained there. Given the warning, she's not allowed to vote today. Can't vote because she's wearing a keffiyeh. Sam Hirsch here tweeting out, lots of talk about how the keffiyeh should be banned because people have defined it as a symbol of resistance. The keffiyeh is a cultural symbol, but when the very existence of Palestinian life is political, then even the smallest things become symbols of resistance. This gets to why I think it is so bizarre to view the keffiyeh as simply a political symbol. For one, it's a cultural symbol, but we are talking about human life. I understand people people having a hard time keeping up with what is going on in the world, but there is a genocide happening. The apartheid Israeli government is committing a genocide against Palestinians. This has been ongoing since October 7th. Let's be clear. October 7th was not the beginning. This has been a long history of domination, of full control of Palestinians by one state, the Israeli state, an occupying force on Palestinian territory, occupying Palestinians, controlling their food, controlling their water, controlling their borders, controlling their air. That's before October 7th. Since October 7th, we've now lost count at the casualties because there is no longer the infrastructure in place in Gaza to be able to properly count the numbers of people that have been killed by Israel. The last count that is official it's over 30,000. And that number is from back in February. So who knows where it's at this point. But we're seeing these constant updates. This is from today. Bodies recovered at mass graves at Nasser Hospital bear signs of torture, mutilation, execution. Over 700 people. 3 different mass graves are containing around 700 bodies. Keep in mind, these are just three locations in all of Gaza. If you've seen the images, mass destruction of the entire territory. Buildings grazed to the ground, hospitals bombed, civilians bombed over and over. Women and children make up the majority of the deaths. Yet, what you really should be offended by is somebody wearing a scarf in solidarity with Palestinians. That should really offend you. Bernie Sanders responding to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who claims that criticisms, these protests going on right now in the U.S. over what Israel is doing, Netanyahu is claiming that that's anti-Semitism. Criticizing a government committing genocide is somehow anti-Semitic, when there are many Jewish people, including Bernie Sanders, on the right side, fighting for Palestinians' rights. Writing here, no, Mr. Netanyahu, it is not anti-Semitic or pro-Hamas to point out that in a little over 6 months, your extremist government has killed 34,000 Palestinians, and again, that's a number that's out of date, and wounded more than 77,000, 70% of whom are women and children. You will not distract us from this immoral war. This is what's actually important. For anybody to take any kind of offense at the existence of a keffiyeh is mind-blowing. There's a great piece here in TVO from David Moskrop. The keffiyeh ban is unjust, and unjust rules should be ignored. The keffiyeh may be cultural or political or both, depending on who's wearing it and why. It isn't the business of the Ontario legislature to decide. Goes on to right here, when members of the Arab Canadian Lawyers Association visited Queen's Park to meet with Merritt Stiles, the NDP leader, they wore keffiyehs. As Global's Colin DeMello reports, they were banned from entering the legislature while wearing the garment and met with the NDP leader on the lawn instead. Who served by denying a handful of lawyers entry to the building in these circumstances? Why them and not, say, someone wearing a pin with a Ukrainian flag on it? What's different here? Look, I don't have images of a politician wearing a Ukrainian flag in the Ontario legislature, but I can guarantee at one point somebody did, and nobody cared, because why would you care? Yet that, under the same conditions, under the same reasoning, would be viewed as a political symbol. As Robin Martin, again, one of the few MPPs that are against the wearing of the keffiyeh, even Doug Ford, the leader of the Conservative Party, doesn't think it should be banned. But again, that goes to a deeper potential issue or potential reasoning with an election coming up that he's concerned about in Milton. But again, I go into that in my previous video. Regardless, Rob Martin is against or is for the banning of the keffiyeh. Writing here, the rules of the legislature are clear that props and clothing that makes a political statement cannot be worn in the chamber, which is very interesting coming from MPP Robin Martin. As Ahmad Al-Bayoumi tweets out here, Martin says the rules, quote, are clear that props and clothing that make a political statement cannot be worn in the chamber. She herself has worn a Bring Them Home Now necklace inside the legislature. So these dog tags here, bring them home. Look, I have no problem with this. You want to wear this, fine, but I'm not going by your ridiculous rule that props and clothing that make a political statement cannot be worn. How is this how is this any different than wearing keffiyeh? In fact, the keffiyeh actually has some cultural significance. It was a thing before these dog tags were created after October 7th. So if anything, the keffiyeh makes more sense than wearing these. But regardless, I don't care. But this is still an obvious prop. How can you claim that the keffiyeh is a prop and you can't wear it, but this isn't? It's completely insane. And to see the level of, I want to say dishonesty, but I think some of these people are just incredibly fucking stupid. Like they don't understand how deep their racism goes to not see the obvious double standards here. This picture, I honestly think, look, maybe I'm too hopeful here, but I think this is going to have an impact. People are going to see how insane this is. and there's going to be more of a vocal shift against it, because this rule already, as I said, most politicians are not for it. So for the keffiyeh to be banned because of a few people is absurd.